Captain David Howard stared at the alien vessel through the viewport, his mind racing with possibilities. The denobulans cowering inside expected death, but he had other plans. As he suited up for the boarding party, he knew his next actions would either doom two species or forge an unprecedented alliance. The year was 2157, and Earth's first interstellar colony ship, the UES Horizon, had stumbled upon a denobulan refugee vessel fleeing their invaded homeworld. The ship's sensors detected life signs, but the aliens' erratic flight pattern suggested desperation. Howard, a decorated war veteran, felt a familiar surge of adrenaline as he prepared to face the unknown. As the airlock hissed open, Howard led his team onto the alien ship. The interior was a maze of unfamiliar technology, pulsing with an eerie bioluminescence. They found the denobulans huddled in the main chamber, their reptilian features contorted in fear. Years of conflict had taught them to expect the worst from other species. One denobulan, however, caught Howard's attention. A young female with intricate light patterns dancing across her scales stepped forward, her eyes meeting his with a mixture of defiance and hope. This was Knox, a scientist who had chosen to face the potential threat head-on. Howard's orders were clear: secure the vessel and detain the aliens. Earth's non-interference protocols were strict, designed to protect humanity's interests as they ventured into the stars. But as he observed Knox's courage and the terror in the eyes of the other refugees, he felt a familiar twinge of conscience. In that moment, Howard made a decision that would alter the course of two civilizations. Against the protests of his crew and the potential consequences of a court-martial, he offered asylum to the denobulans aboard the Horizon. The refugees' advanced biotechnology, he reasoned, could be crucial for humanity's survival on their new world. As the denobulans were brought aboard the Horizon, tensions immediately flared. Human colonists, already anxious about their journey to an unknown planet, now found themselves sharing close quarters with an alien species. Whispers of contamination and invasion spread through the ship's corridors. Knox struggled to adapt to human society, the trauma of her species' near extinction weighing heavily on her shoulders. She found an unlikely ally in Captain Howard, who recognized the potential in fostering cooperation between their peoples. As they worked together to bridge the cultural divide, an unexpected attraction began to grow. Their developing bond threatened the delicate balance aboard the ship. Both humans and denobulans grappled with the implications of interspecies relations, challenging long-held beliefs and prejudices. Howard found himself caught between his duty to his crew and his growing feelings for Knox. As the Horizon approached its destination, a habitable planet dubbed New Eden, the stakes grew higher. Howard faced not only a potential court-martial for his actions, but also the monumental task of establishing a peaceful coexistence between humans and denobulans on an alien world. The fate of both species now rested on the shoulders of a war-hardened captain and a courageous alien scientist. Their choices in the coming days would determine whether New Eden would become a battleground or the birthplace of an unprecedented alliance. The journey that began with fear and mistrust now held the promise of a future neither species could have imagined alone. As the UES Horizon approached New Eden, the initial excitement of discovering a habitable world gave way to mounting tensions. The ship's corridors, once filled with hopeful chatter about new beginnings, now echoed with hushed whispers and suspicious glances between humans and denobulans. Security Officer Marcus Graves stood in the weapons control room, his fingers hovering over the console. He turned to his followers, a group of human extremists who shared his fears about the alien presence aboard their ship. "It's time," Graves said, his voice low and determined. "We can't let Howard jeopardize everything we've worked for." With a series of quick commands, Graves and his team seized control of the ship's weapons systems and communications. Alarms blared throughout the Horizon as the mutiny unfolded. Captain David Howard was in his quarters, discussing terraforming possibilities with Knox when the alarm sounded. He immediately accessed the ship's internal communication system, only to find it unresponsive. "What's happening?" Knox asked, her bioluminescent patterns flickering with anxiety. Before David could respond, Marcus Graves' voice crackled over the emergency speakers. "Captain Howard, your misguided charity ends now. Surrender command, or we'll space the Denobulan refugees. You have 1 hour to comply. David's lips pursed as he processed the threat. He turned to Knox, whose scales had dimmed in fear. I won't let that happen, he assured her. We need a plan. Knox's eyes widened as an idea formed. Our bioluminescence, she said. We can use it to create distractions throughout the ship, and I know the ventilation systems. We could move unseen. David nodded, a spark of hope igniting in his chest. Gather your people. I'll assemble a team of loyal crew members. We'll coordinate our movements to outmaneuver Graves and his followers. As Knox slipped away to rally the Denobulans, David contacted his most trusted officers through secure channels. Within minutes, a daring plan was set in motion. Denobulan refugees crawled through the ship's ventilation ducts, their bodies pulsing with mesmerizing light patterns. They emerged in strategic locations, creating brilliant displays that disoriented and confused the mutineers. Taking advantage of the chaos, David led a small team through the ship's maintenance corridors. They moved swiftly, disabling the mutineers' makeshift barricades and reclaiming key systems. As they approached the weapons control room, David heard Graves barking orders to his dwindling supporters. He signaled his team to take position, then stepped into view. It's over, Marcus, David called out. Stand down. Graves spun around, his face contorted with rage. You're throwing away humanity's future, he snarled, lunging at David with a makeshift weapon. In the ensuing struggle, David felt a searing pain in his side. He stumbled, aware of the warm blood seeping through his uniform. Despite the injury, he managed to subdue Graves with the help of his team. As the last of the mutineers were rounded up, Knox rushed to David's side. Without hesitation, she pressed a small, pulsating device against his wound. David felt an odd tingling sensation as the Denobulan biotechnology began to repair his damaged tissue. Thank you, he murmured, marveling at the rapid healing. Knox smiled, her scales shimmering with relief. The crisis aboard the ship was far from finished, however. As David limped to the bridge, supported by Knox, they were confronted with a new challenge. The horizon had entered New Eden's orbit, and the planet's harsh realities were becoming clear. Captain, the science officer reported, scans show extreme temperature fluctuations and toxic atmospheric components. Human colonization will be difficult. Knox studied the data scrolling across the screens, her expression thoughtful. Our physiology, she said slowly, it's better suited for these conditions. We could help. David looked at her intrigued. What do you mean? A symbiotic relationship, Knox explained, her excitement growing. We could use our biological adaptations to terraform the planet more efficiently. It would benefit both our species. As David considered the proposal, a commotion erupted on the bridge. Sir, called out the Censor's officer, we've detected an artificial structure on the planet's surface. It's not human or Denobulan in origin. The atmosphere on the bridge grew tense as the implications sank in. Knox's scales paled, her voice barely a whisper. Could it be them, the ones who destroyed our world? David placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder, even as his mind raced with the potential threats this discovery posed. He turned to address the bridge crew, acutely aware of the challenges that lay ahead. Prepare a detailed report on the structure, he ordered, and assemble the colony leaders, human and Denobulan. We need to discuss our next steps. As the crew sprang into action, David pulled Knox aside. I need to know everything you can tell me about the invasion of your homeworld, he said gently. Any information could be crucial for protecting our people, all our people, down there. Knox nodded, her eyes meeting David's with a mix of trust and trepidation. As she began to speak, David realized that the story of New Eden was only just beginning. The fate of two species, thrown together by circumstance and choice, would be decided on the surface of this alien world, and whatever challenges awaited them, they would face them together. Captain David Howard stood on the bridge of the UES horizon, his gaze fixed on the swirling atmosphere of New Eden below. The mysterious structure on the planet's surface loomed large in his mind, a silent sentinel holding untold secrets and potential dangers. Final preparations are complete, Captain, Lieutenant Chen reported, her voice steady despite the palpable tension on the bridge. The landing party is assembled and ready for deployment. David nodded, his expression a mask of grit. Very well, let's make history. As he made his way to the shuttle bay, David found Nox waiting for him. Her scales shimmered with a mix of excitement and apprehension. "Are you certain about this?" she asked, falling into step beside him. "Bringing Dr. Graves along seems risky." David sighed, understanding her concern. His expertise could be invaluable down there, and sometimes the best way to neutralize a threat is to keep it close. The shuttle bay buzzed with activity as the joint human-denobulan team made final checks on their equipment. Dr. Marcus Graves stood apart from the others, his face a study in barely suppressed anticipation. As the team boarded the shuttle, David caught Graves's eye. "Remember, Doctor, this is your chance at redemption. Don't waste it." Graves nodded curtly, his lips pressed into a thin line. The descent to New Eden's surface was turbulent, the shuttle bucking against fierce winds and electromagnetic interference. As they broke through the cloud cover, the alien structure came into view, a gleaming spire of unknown metal, its surface etched with intricate patterns that seemed to shift and change as they watched. "Magnificent," Graves breathed, pressing his face against the viewport. The shuttle touched down on a rocky plateau a short distance from the structure. As the team disembarked, the harsh reality of New Eden's environment hit them full force. Acidic wind whipped at their protective suits, while the ground beneath their feet trembled with seismic activity. "Stay alert," David ordered as they approached the structure. "We don't know what kind of defenses this place might have." As if in response to his words, a section of the structure's base slid open, revealing a dimly lit passageway. The team exchanged uneasy glances before David took the lead, stepping into the unknown. The interior of the structure was a marvel of alien engineering. Organic-looking conduits pulsed with energy along the walls, while holographic displays flickered to life as they passed. "This technology, it's unlike anything I've ever seen," Nox murmured, her scientist curiosity overriding her caution. As they ventured deeper, they entered a vast chamber dominated by a central console. David approached it carefully, his hand hovering over its surface. Suddenly, the console sprang to life, projecting a massive holographic image of the galaxy. A disembodied voice filled the chamber, speaking in a language none of them recognized. Then, as if sensing their confusion, it shifted to English. "Welcome, children of the stars," the voice intoned. "We are the progenitors, the seeders of life throughout this galaxy." The holographic display zoomed in on Earth and Denobula, highlighting the evolutionary paths of both species. The team watched in awe as millennia of development unfolded before their eyes. "Impossible," Graves whispered, his earlier arrogance replaced by wonder. As the hologram faded, Nox stepped forward, her scales pulsing with intense patterns. "Our entire history, everything we believed about our origins." David placed a comforting hand on her shoulder, his knees going weak from the implications. "It changes everything, doesn't it?" Before anyone could respond, a piercing alarm cut through the air. Nox, startled by the sound, stumbled against a nearby console. The chamber hummed with sudden energy, and a new hologram appeared, a pulsing signal radiating out into space. "What have you done?" Graves shouted, rounding on Nox. David intervened, pushing Graves back. "It was an accident. We need to focus on shutting this down before—" His words were cut short as a new presence filled the chamber. A shimmering figure coalesced before them, its form constantly shifting between various alien species. "I am the Guardian," it announced, its voice resonating with authority. "You have awakened this outpost and initiated the Progenitor's Protocol. You will be tested." The team listened in stunned silence as the Guardian explained the nature of the tests and the stakes involved. As it spoke of human denobulan compatibility, David found his gaze drawn to Nox. Their eyes met, a universe of unspoken thoughts passing between them. The moment was broken by Graves' angry outburst. "This is absurd. We should take what we need by force. This technology could guarantee humanity's dominance." "Silence!" the Guardian's voice boomed, causing the very air to vibrate. "Your actions will determine your species' fate. Choose wisely." As the Guardian's form faded, leaving them alone in the chamber, alarms blared once more. The outpost's external defenses engaged, sealing them inside. David's communicator crackled to life, filling with the panicked voice of Lieutenant Chen aboard the horizon. "Captain, we're detecting multiple unidentified vessels entering the system. They're on an intercept course." David closed his eyes, feeling the weight of two civilizations pressing down on him. When he opened them again, he saw his team, human and denobulan alike, looking to him for guidance. "All right," he said, his voice calm despite the storm raging inside him. "We've got tests to pass, an outpost to unlock, and a colony to protect. Let's get to work." As the team spread out to examine the chamber's various consoles and databanks, David found himself standing next to Knox. The unspoken tension between them was palpable. "Whatever happens," he said softly, "we're in this together." Knox's scales flickered with a pattern he had come to recognize as affection. "Together," she agreed. With restored dedication, they turned to face the challenges ahead, knowing that the future of both their species hung in the balance. David and Knox exchanged a determined look as they approached the first of the Guardian's tests. The chamber around them shifted, holographic projections creating a treacherous obstacle course that stretched as far as the eye could see. "Ready?" David asked, his voice steady despite the uncertainty that gripped him. Knox's scales rippled with a mix of anticipation and nervousness. "As I'll ever be," she replied, her multifaceted eyes scanning the challenges ahead. They stepped forward in unison, immediately confronted by a chasm too wide for a human to jump. Without hesitation, Knox's body elongated, her flexible denobulan physiology allowing her to form a living bridge. David quickly crossed, using her form as a support. "Nicely done," he said, helping her retract to her normal shape on the other side. The next obstacle required David's problem-solving skills. A holographic wall blocked their path, covered in shifting symbols. David studied the patterns, recognizing elements of Earth's ancient languages, mixed with what he assumed were denobulan script. "Knox, what do these symbols mean to you?" he asked, pointing to a cluster of glyphs. She leaned in, her breath warm on his cheek. "They represent cellular structures." "Wait, I see it now? It's a DNA sequence." Together, they deciphered the puzzle, their combined knowledge unlocking the path forward. As they progressed through more challenges, their teamwork became more fluid, each instinctively knowing how to support the other. Hours passed, though time seemed meaningless in the ever-changing environment of the outpost. They faced simulated crisis scenarios that tested their decision-making skills, forcing them to balance the needs of both their species in high-pressure situations. During a brief respite, David noticed Dr. Graves hunched over a control panel, his fingers flying across the alien interface. "Graves, what are you doing?" David called out, suspicion creeping into his voice. The scientist jerked back, his eyes wild. "Saving us all, Captain. These tests are a waste of time. I can bypass the system, give us control of this technology." Before David could stop him, Graves smacked his fist onto the panel. Alarms blared throughout the outpost, and the Guardian's voice boomed overhead. "Security breach detected. Self-destruct sequence initiated. Time to termination, 30 minutes. David raced to the console, pushing Graves aside. "What have you done?" Knox joined them, her scales pulsing with urgency. "We need to stop this, now!" They worked feverishly, David's tactical mind complementing Knox's understanding of the alien systems. As the minutes ticked by, they made progress. But it wasn't enough. "There's a firewall we can't breach," Knox said, frustration evident in her voice. David's eyes darted around the chamber, looking for anything they might have missed. His gaze fell on a previously hidden doorway, now visible and pulsing with energy. "There," he pointed. "That wasn't open before. It might be our only chance." They rushed through the doorway, finding themselves in a vast chamber filled with sleek, organic-looking machinery. At its center stood a pillar of light, pulsating with power. Knox's eyes widened in recognition. This is terraforming technology, far beyond anything we've ever seen. David approached the central console, his hand hovering over the controls. "Can we use this to stop the self-destruct?" Knox studied the interface, her expression grave. "Yes, but it requires a unique genetic key, A combination of human and denobulan DNA. Their eyes met, the implications hanging heavy between them. David swallowed hard, his voice barely above a whisper. How would we do that? Knox's scales flushed with a pattern David had never seen before. We would need to combine our genetic material, create something new. The outpost shuddered around them, a reminder of the imminent destruction. David took a deep breath, reaching out to take Knox's hand. If you're willing, I am. What followed was an intimate, almost sacred moment. Their bodies joined, not just physically, but on a cellular level. The alien technology around them hummed, drawing upon their combined essence to form a single, hybrid cell. As they separated, both breathless and overwhelmed, the pillar of light flared brilliantly. The alarm ceased, and the Guardian's voice returned, tinged with what almost sounded like approval. Genetic compatibility confirmed. Terraforming protocols unlocked. Outpost defenses online. David and Knox stood in stunned silence, the weight of what they'd done settling over them. Their moment of quiet contemplation was shattered by a transmission from the horizon. Captain! Commander Dixon's voice crackled through the comm system. We're under attack. Multiple harvester ships have entered orbit. We're evacuating the colonists, but we can't hold them off much longer. David snapped back into action, his mind racing. Commander, we've unlocked the outpost defenses. Stand by for support. He turned to Knox, who was already activating the newly accessible systems. Can you get these defenses online? She nodded, her fingers dancing across the alien controls. Already on it. But David, there's something else. The outpost is giving us information about the harvesters. They're progenitors, a rogue faction. David's blood ran cold as he absorbed this information. They created us, and now they want to harvest us? For what? Genetic potential, Knox explained, her voice tight. They see us as experiments to be exploited. A holographic display sprang to life, showing the battle raging in orbit. The horizon was darting between the much larger harvester ships, landing precision strikes before retreating. We need to end this, David said, his eyes sharp. What's the most powerful weapon this outpost has? Knox's scales paled as she read the information scrolling across her screen. There's an energy weapon capable of disabling their entire fleet, but to activate it, she trailed off, looking at David with a mix of fear and dedication. What? He pressed. Whatever it is, we'll do it. Knox took a deep breath. It requires final proof of our compatibility, the creation of a viable hybrid embryo. David's mind reeled at the implications. This was more than just a momentary joining. This would irreversibly alter the course of both their species. As alarms blared once again, signaling the harvesters' ground assault, David and Knox faced each other. The fate of New Eden, of both their peoples, hung in the balance. Knox, David said, his voice thick with emotion. I know we've only known each other a short time, but She placed a finger on his lips, silencing him. I know, she said softly. I feel it too. They moved together once more, this time with purpose and deep, unspoken emotion. As their bodies joined, the outpost systems hummed to life around them, sensing the potential being created. In orbit above New Eden, Commander Dixon watched in awe as the planet's surface began to glow with otherworldly energy. A beam of pure light shot from the location of the progenitor outpost, lancing through space to strike the lead harvester ship. The effect was immediate and devastating. The massive vessel shuddered, its systems failing. The beam arced from ship to ship, leaving the entire harvester fleet dead in space. As the light faded, Dixon's comm system crackled to life. Horizon, this is Captain Howard. The threat has been neutralized. Prepare for some big changes planetside. In the heart of the outpost, David and Knox stood wrapped in each other's arms, watching as the terraforming technology began its work on New Eden. The harsh atmosphere started to shift, becoming more hospitable with each passing second. What now? Knox asked, her scales shimmering with a mix of emotions. David smiled, pulling her closer. Now we build a future, together. As the first rays of New Eden's sun broke through the transforming atmosphere, casting a warm glow over the alien landscape, David and Knox knew that their journey and the true test of human denobulan cooperation was only just beginning. As the first rays of New Eden's sun broke through the transforming atmosphere, casting a warm glow over the alien landscape, David and Knox knew that their journey and the true test of human denobulan cooperation was only just starting. The Guardian's voice resonated through the chamber, tinged with approval. You have proven your species' compatibility. The final test awaits. David and Knox exchanged a look of understanding. They had come too far to turn back now. Hand in hand, they followed the Guardian's guidance to a specially designed chamber deep within the outpost. The room hummed with energy, its walls lined with pulsating bioorganic circuitry. At its center stood a cylindrical pod, bathed in a soft, ethereal light. This chamber will facilitate the creation of a human denobulan hybrid embryo, the Guardian explained. It is the ultimate proof of your species' genetic compatibility and the key to unlocking the full potential of this outpost. David took a deep breath, his heart racing. Knox, are you sure about this? Her scales rippled with a mix of nervousness and grit. We've come this far together, David. I trust you. They stepped into the pod, its translucent walls closing around them. The air filled with a fine mist, tingling against their skin. David felt a warmth spreading through his body, every cell seeming to vibrate with potential. Knox gasped softly, her scales shifting in rapid patterns. I can feel it, David. Our genetic codes, they're merging. A holographic display materialized before them, showing the intricate dance of their combined DNA. Strands intertwined, recombined, and formed something entirely new. As the process reached its crescendo, a tiny cluster of cells appeared on the screen, the first human denobulan hybrid embryo. The outpost came alive around them. Lights flared, systems hummed to life, and a wave of energy pulsed through the structure. The pod opened, and David and Knox stepped out, changed in ways they were only beginning to understand. Alarms blared, cutting through their moment of wonder. The comm system crackled with urgency. Captain, it was Lieutenant Chen's voice. The harvesters have launched their ground assault. Our defenses won't hold for long. David's training kicked in. Knox, we need to access those defense systems now. They raced to the outpost's control center, their fingers flying over the alien interfaces with newfound understanding. Knox's eyes widened as she decoded the system's capabilities. David, look at this. We can create an energy shield around the entire colony. With a series of commands, they activated the outpost's defensive array. A shimmering dome of energy erupted from hidden emitters, expanding rapidly to envelop the settlement. The first wave of harvester dropships slammed into the shield, disintegrating on impact. It worked, David exclaimed, watching the tactical display. But we can't stop there. We need to push them back for good. Knox was already several steps ahead, her hands dancing across the controls. The terraforming systems, we can use them to our advantage. Look. She brought up a schematic of New Eden, revealing a network of underground generators. As they activated each node, the planet itself seemed to respond. The harsh atmosphere began to shift, becoming more hospitable with each passing moment. David opened a channel to the horizon. Commander Dixon, status report. Sarah's voice came through, strained but determined. We're holding our own up here, Captain, but we could use some help. These harvester ships are tough nuts to crack. Help is on the way, David assured her. He turned to Knox. Can we get a secure link to the horizon? Share what we've learned about the harvesters? Knox nodded, her scales pulsing with concentration. Connecting now. The hybrid embryo's creation has unlocked new capabilities in the system. We should be able to... Her words were cut off by a deafening explosion. Dr. Graves burst into the control room, his face contorted with manic persistence. You don't understand what you're doing, he shouted, brandishing a makeshift weapon. This technology could guarantee humanity's dominance in the galaxy. David moved to shield Knox, his voice firm. Stand down, Doctor. This isn't about dominance, it's about survival. For all of us. As Graves wavered, the outpost shuddered around them. A new alarm sounded, its tone ominous and final. The Guardian's voice echoed through the chamber. Failsafe protocol initiated. This facility will self-destruct to prevent unauthorized access to progenitor technology. Time remaining, 30 minutes. David's mind raced. They had unlocked the outpost's potential, only to face losing it all. He locked eyes with Knox, seeing his own persistence reflected in her multifaceted gaze. "We're not done yet," he said, turning back to the controls. "Let's see how much we can salvage in half an hour." As they worked feverishly to download critical data and prepare for evacuation, the battle for New Eden raged on. In orbit and on the ground, human and denobulan forces fought side by side, their fates now irrevocably intertwined. The countdown ticked relentlessly forward, each second bringing them closer to destruction or to a new beginning for both their species. As the countdown reached its final seconds, David and Knox sprinted from the progenitor outpost, clutching data drives filled with invaluable information. Behind them, Dr. Graves stumbled, his face a mask of regret and fear. The ground shook as they cleared the structure's perimeter, and a blinding flash illuminated the sky. When the dust settled, the outpost was gone, leaving only a smoking crater. But the hybrid embryo, secured in a portable stasis unit, pulsed with life and possibility. In the months that followed, New Eden transformed. The harsh landscape softened under the influence of the terraforming technology, while a sprawling settlement rose from the wilderness. Humans and denobulans worked side by side, their differences fading in the face of shared purpose. David stood at the window of the newly constructed command center, watching colonists tend to fields of alien crops. Knox approached, her scales shimmering with pride. "The atmospheric processors are operating at peak efficiency," she reported. "We're ahead of schedule on making the air breathable without assistance." David nodded, his eyes drawn to the incubation chamber dominating the adjacent laboratory. Inside, their hybrid child grew at an astonishing rate, its form a perfect blend of human and denobulan features. "Any updates from Dr. Chen?" he asked. Knox's scales flushed a deep blue. "The embryo's development continues to exceed all projections. Its neural activity is extraordinary." Their moment of contemplation was interrupted by a comm alert. Commander Dixon's face appeared on the main screen, her expression tense. "Captain, we've got an incoming ship. It's not Harvester, it's one of ours, the UES Dauntless." David straightened, adjusting his uniform. "Looks like Earth's finally come to check on us. Prepare a welcoming committee, Commander. Let's show them what we've accomplished here." As the Dauntless touched down on the newly constructed landing pad, David and Knox stood at the forefront of a mixed group of human and denobulan colonists. The ship's main hatch opened with a hiss of equalizing pressure, and a stern-faced man in an admiral's uniform emerged. "Captain Howard," the man said, his voice clipped and formal. "I'm Admiral Jonathan Zhao. I'm here to assess the situation on New Eden." David saluted crisply. "Welcome to our colony, Admiral. We're honored by your visit." Zhao's eyes darted to Knox, then to the diverse crowd behind them. His lips tightened almost imperceptibly. "I see you've been busy, Captain. Perhaps you can give me a tour of your operation here." As they walked through the settlement, David and Knox detailed their progress, the challenges they'd overcome, and their plans for the future. Zhao listened with a neutral expression, occasionally asking pointed questions about resource allocation and command structure. Their tour was interrupted by a violent tremor that shook the ground beneath their feet. Alarms blared across the compound. "What's happening?" Zhao demanded, steadying himself against a nearby wall. Knox's scales paled as she checked a handheld sensor. Seismic activity off the charts. The terraforming process must have triggered a fault line. David was already moving, shouting orders into his comm unit. "All teams to emergency stations. Activate the stabilization protocols." They raced to the Environmental Control Center, where screens displayed a real-time map of the growing crisis. Fault lines spiderwebbed across the continent, threatening to tear the fragile ecosystem apart. We need to reroute power to the tectonic stabilizers, Knox said, her fingers flying over the controls. But it's not enough. The standard equipment can't handle this level of activity. David's mind raced. What about the progenitor tech we salvaged? The adaptive field generators? Knox's eyes widened. Yes, if we can modify them to work with our systems. Do it, David ordered. He turned to Admiral Zhao, who watched the frantic activity with a mix of concern and grudging admiration. Admiral, we could use all hands on deck. Your crew's assistance could make the difference. Zhao hesitated for a moment, then nodded sharply. Consider the Dauntless's resources at your disposal, Captain. As the crisis unfolded, humans and denobulans worked in perfect synchronization. Engineers jury-rigged progenitor technology to interface with colonial systems. Scientists analyzed geological data in real time, predicting and counteracting seismic shifts. Through it all, David and Knox coordinated the efforts, their shared leadership a testament to the strength of their alliance. Hours passed in a blur of activity. Finally, as the last tremor subsided, a cheer went up from the exhausted colonists. David allowed himself a moment of relief before turning to Admiral Zhao. The Admiral's face was unreadable. Impressive work, Captain. Your people performed admirably under pressure. Thank you, sir, David replied. But I hope you noticed it wasn't just my people. This victory belongs to all of us, human and denobulan alike. Zhao's expression tightened, but before he could respond, a comm alert chimed. Commander Dixon's voice came through, urgent and focused. Captain, Admiral, you need to see this. We've detected anomalies at the edge of the system. Multiple contacts approaching fast. David and Zhao exchanged a look of shared concern. The challenges facing New Eden were nowhere near the end. As the colony prepared for potential threats, David and Knox hurried to the medical bay, their hearts racing with a mixture of anticipation and concern. The advanced incubation chamber housing their hybrid embryo dominated the center of the room, surrounded by a team of human and denobulan medical professionals. Dr. Elena Torres, a human geneticist with dark hair pulled back in a tight bun, looked up from her console. Captain Knox, you're just in time. The embryo's growth rate has accelerated beyond our wildest expectations. Dr. Zax, a denobulan biologist with intricate scale patterns, added, We're seeing development equivalent to a full-term pregnancy, but in a matter of weeks. It's unprecedented. Knox pressed her hand against the chamber's surface, her scales rippling with emotion. I can feel it, she whispered. There's a presence, a connection I can't explain. David placed his hand next to hers, marveling at the tiny form visible within. Is the child healthy? Dr. Torres nodded, her expression a mix of excitement and professional concern. Remarkably so, the combination of human and denobulan DNA, influenced by the progenitor technology, has resulted in extraordinary potential, but we're in uncharted territory here. As they discussed the implications of the accelerated growth, the lights in the medical bay flickered, consoles blinked on and off, and for a heart-stopping moment, the incubation chamber's readouts went dark. What's happening? David demanded, moving instinctively to protect the chamber. Dr. Zax's fingers flew over the controls. We're experiencing power fluctuations, switching to backup systems now. The chamber hummed back to life, but the incident left everyone on edge. David tapped his communicator. Howard to Dixon, we've got system malfunctions in the medical bay. What's our status? Security Chief Michael Dixon's voice came through, tense and focused. We're seeing similar issues across the colony, Captain. Communications, power generators, it's widespread. I've got teams investigating, but this looks like more than a simple malfunction. David exchanged a grim look with Knox. Sabotage? It's a strong possibility, Dixon confirmed. I'm implementing heightened security protocols now. We'll find the source of this, sir. As David coordinated with Dixon, Knox felt a sudden surge of emotion that wasn't her own. She gasped, drawing everyone's attention. Knox? David asked, concern etched on his face. She placed both hands on the incubation chamber, her scales pulsing with rapid color changes. The child, I can sense its thoughts, its feelings. It's aware, David. Far more than it should be at this stage. Dr. Torres quickly ran a series of scans, her eyes widening at the results. The neural activity is off the charts. If I'm reading this correctly, the hybrid's cognitive development is accelerating along with its physical growth. The implications of this discovery were cut short as Admiral Zhao burst into the medical bay, his usual composure shaken. "Captain Howard, we have a situation," Zhao announced. "Long-range sensors have detected a massive energy surge from the system where the Harvester fleet was regrouping. And now, nothing. They've vanished." David straightened, his mind racing. Vanished? Could they have developed some kind of cloaking technology? Zhao shook his head. Unknown. But that's not all. We're detecting increased seismic activity across New Eden. The timing can't be a coincidence. As if to emphasize the Admiral's point, the floor trembled beneath their feet. Nox steadied herself against the incubation chamber, her connection to the hybrid child intensifying. "David," she said urgently, "the child senses something. I can't explain it, but there's a link between what's happening with the harvesters, the planet, and our baby." Admiral Zhao's expression tightened, but to David's surprise, he nodded slowly. "I've seen enough here to know we're dealing with forces beyond our current understanding. Captain, you have my full support. Whatever resources you need to protect this colony and your child." The Admiral's change in attitude was interrupted by another tremor, stronger this time. Alarms blared throughout the facility. David's communicator chirped. "Dixon to Howard. Captain, we've uncovered evidence of a saboteur network within the colony. They're targeting critical systems, including the orbital defense network construction." "Any leads on who's behind this?" David asked, already moving towards the door. "Initial evidence points to a group of human purists," Dixon reported. "Led by, sir, you're not going to like this. It's Lieutenant James Parker." David's fist tight, a trusted member of the Horizons crew, turning against everything they'd built here. "Find him, Dixon. We need to stop this now." As David prepared to leave, Knox grabbed his arm. "Wait," she said, her voice filled with a strange certainty. "The child, it wants to help. I don't know how, but I think it might be the key to understanding everything that's happening." David looked from Knox to the incubation chamber, where their hybrid child continued to grow at an astonishing rate. In that moment, he realized that the future of New Eden, and perhaps much more, rested not just on their ability to overcome the immediate threats, but on the extraordinary being they had created together. "All right," he said, squeezing Knox's hand. "Let's see what our child can do." "Do," David said, his voice filled with persistence. He turned to Admiral Zhao. "Admiral, we need to evacuate the medical bay immediately. If these tremors continue, we can't risk compromising the incubation chamber." As if on cue, another violent shake rattled the facility. Alarms blared, their urgent wails echoing through the corridors. "Agreed," Zhao nodded, his earlier skepticism replaced by grim purpose. "I'll coordinate with my team to assist." The medical staff sprang into action, preparing the incubation chamber for transport. David and Knox worked in tandem, their movements synchronized as they secured the precious cargo. Suddenly, the floor beneath them buckled. A deafening crack reverberated through the air as a fissure opened up, snaking across the medical bay floor. "Everyone out now!" David shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. They maneuvered the chamber through the doorway, just as a section of the ceiling collapsed behind them. The group hurried down the corridor, the ground continuing to shake beneath their feet. As they emerged into the open air, David's eyes widened at the sight before him. The colony, which had been a picture of progress just hours before, now teetered on the brink of disaster. In the distance, massive structures were rising from the ground, their alien architecture unmistakable. "Progenitor tech," Knox breathed, her scales shimmering with a mix of awe and apprehension. The incubation chamber began to pulse with an otherworldly light, responding to the awakening structures. Inside, the form of their child shifted and grew at an exponential rate. Dr. Torres checked her readings, her face a mask of disbelief. "The embryo's development, it's accelerating beyond anything we've seen. We need to prepare for immediate delivery." David's heart raced as he realized the magnitude of what was happening. He keyed his communicator. "Dixon, status report." Captain, you're not going to believe this, Dixon's voice crackled through. The entire planet is lighting up like a Christmas tree. Those progenitor structures are activating some kind of global network. Before David could respond, a piercing cry filled the air. He turned to see Dr. Torres and Dr. Zax working feverishly around the incubation chamber. It's time, Dr. Zax announced, his usually calm demeanor tinged with excitement. David and Knox moved closer, their hands intertwined as they watched in awe. The chamber's surface became translucent, revealing the form of a fully developed infant within. With a final series of beeps, the chamber opened. Dr. Torres gently lifted the child, a girl, and placed her in Knox's arms. She's perfect, Knox whispered, tears glistening in her eyes. David leaned in, marveling at their daughter's features, a harmonious blend of human and denobulan characteristics. Aurora, he said softly, the name coming to him unbidden. As if in response to her name, Aurora's eyes opened. They were unlike anything David had ever seen, swirling pools of iridescent color that seemed to hold the secrets of the universe. Suddenly, David felt a presence in his mind, warm, curious, and infinitely complex. From Knox's sharp intake of breath, he knew she felt it too. She's communicating with us, Knox said in wonder. Aurora's mental touch expanded, reaching out to everyone present. Images flashed through their minds, visions of ancient civilizations, of worlds connected across vast distances, of species coming together in harmony. Admiral Zhao stumbled back, overwhelmed by the mental onslaught. What is this? Understanding, David replied, his voice filled with newfound certainty. She's showing us New Eden's true purpose. As if to confirm his words, holographic interfaces sprang to life around them. Streams of data and intricate schematics filled the air, revealing the planet's hidden complexities. It's a nexus, Dr. Torres exclaimed, her scientific mind racing to process the information. New Eden was designed to bring different species together, to unlock their combined potential. The ground beneath them stabilized as Aurora's influence spread. The progenitor structures pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat, the entire planet coming alive with the ancient power. A distant explosion shattered the moment of wonder. David's communicator crackled to life. Captain! Dixon's urgent voice came through. We've got hostiles approaching the medical facility. It's Parker and his purist group. They're heavily armed. David's face hardened. Even in this moment of revelation, the threat of human prejudice loomed. Protect Aurora at all costs, he ordered, his voice steely with dedication. I'll lead a team to intercept them. As David prepared to defend his family and the future they represented, Aurora's eyes met his. In that moment, he saw not just his daughter, but a bridge between worlds, a key to unlocking the grand design that had brought them all to this point in the cosmos. The sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the corridor. David readied himself for the confrontation, knowing that the fate of not just New Eden, but potentially the entire galaxy, hung in the balance.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.